Discussion with we are focused on creating an environment that practitioners can thrive in. And there's no better way to do that than to share experiences and lessons from people that have actually done this and done it well. So I have another expert here today, and I will allow the expert to introduce himself.
Thank you, Alavi. Hello, viewers. My name is Robert Okello. I'm an expert in economic development, and I've been working in this space in Uganda for the last 13 years. And I'm so glad to finally be on Dev TV to discuss my experience.
Thank you very much. No, thank you very much. So, as you know, some of the things that we've been discussing on Def TV is private sector engagement. And I hesitate to link this to market systems development because um, it's a separate animal by itself, isn't it? Private sector engagement as opposed to the concept of market systems as an approach to economic development.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you make. In my experience of both market systems and private sector engagement, I think market systems is really about ensuring that the functions and rules of a market work to ensure that the poor can participate. But for that to work, you need market actors, and some of the market actors are private sector actors. Now, in my view, private sector engagement is about preparing these private sector actors to be ready to participate in a manner that then allow what you want to achieve with market systems to be achieved. So I think there is a distinction in my experience and in my view. Yes.
So, would you say that private sector engagement is a subset of market systems as an approach, or would you say there are two different paths to economic development?
I would, the way I've applied it, I would think it's a subset. I would think it's something that needs to be done before you can have a successful market systems development intervention. Because a successful market systems intervention depends on private sector, which is primed to both participate and also create the space for an enabling market system.
Fantastic. So now the question for me is this: How? So imagine I'm a new professional. I'm coming into this market system development approach. Uh, well, I'm coming into a project that has been mandated to use market systems. And what would you advise as the things that I need to do before I start getting engaged with any actor, be it private or public sector? What are the things that you would say as a new entrant into this sort of approach? What are the things I really should know?
Let's just use a very practical example. You come to a space and you need, let's say, a private sector actor that is buying products from farmers. But unfortunately, in the area where you are, depending on whether it's a thin market or it's a thick market, really, if it's a thin market, most times you won't find that actor. Or if they are there, then they are too small. Now, for you to deliver change at scale, you need a very agile private sector entity. And at least in my experience of market systems, I don't think practitioners give enough attention to building the private sector because then the overarching principle is that there is another actor within the market system that will engage that private sector actor. That is not wrong, but in most cases, in a market which is thin, that business development service actor, which should build the capacity of this private sector, is absent as well. So I think, first of all, you really need to have the skill sets that can both initiate and grow ventures for a private sector actor before the private sector actor can see value in what you're doing And then you also build that actor whom you will then go and engage when you reach the stage of a market systems intervention project. I think, in my experience, because of that, a lot of the market systems projects that go into thin markets take a long time to develop, to deliver impact at the scale which they want to deliver. Also, I think there's a mismatch of skills between the practitioners that the market systems development projects hire and the skills that are required to build the private sector at that stage. So I think the most important thing is really to have financial literacy, to have skills of developing products and business cases, which is completely different from the facilitation skills that is the core of the skill set that a market systems practitioner should have.
Fantastic. I mean, my original intention was really to focus on investment and how we can attract private sector investment into the North project. But I think you've touched on things that are particularly important in economic development, particularly for practitioners. And that's the delineation between facilitation skills and the building of relationships with private sector actors or creating private sector actors, as you just explained. So I want to try and dive into that a bit more. So as a new practitioner, um, what my understanding should be is that being a facilitator is very different from creating or engaging with market actors. Now, can you explain what the difference is and perhaps maybe use some experience you've had in the past to basically separate those two things and when one is appropriate, when facilitation is appropriate, and when engagement is appropriate?
Thank you. I think, first of all, I think a practitioner can have both hats, but you should actually wear them at different times. In my experience, when I was working in the vanilla value chain in Uganda, um, it was a supply chain that delivered products to an off-taker in the USA. So it needed very high quality vanilla products. Now, the manner in which the products were being exported was not aligned to the manner in which the importer wanted the product to come through to them. The importer wanted vanillin, which is extracted in liquid form. The off-taker in Uganda could only export vanilla that is cured in bean form. So then what you have to do is to move that actor through the process of creating a new product, which is vanillin extracted from the vanilla bean. Now that is investment for that private sector actor because you need equipment and machinery that is going to extract it. That is skills for a new set of workers who have to test the quality because the quality parameters for vanilla bean is different from vanillin. That is, you need to do a financial model to show that actor that in fact when you go to vanillin, you make more money or at least you don't lose money. So that skill set is very different from the skill set of, let's say, linking that actor to another actor in the market systems who could maybe come and look at your finances. If the actors don't exist in the market space who can do exactly what the private sector person needs to be done in the time frame that it has to be done, because in that case there was a time frame and the opportunity would have been lost if the product was not delivered within the time frame. So in that case, we had to put in the hat of a practitioner to build that private sector and not having the hat of a facilitator. But once that private sector actor made the first consignment of delivery, Then the other exporter starts to see that, okay, you can actually extract vanillin, which is less in content or in bulk to what they were expecting, they were exporting before. So it's more lucrative. Then they ask, how can we then also come in and join in exporting vanillin as opposed to the vanilla bean?
Right.
Then in that case, you put on rather the
Facilitators.
facilitator's hat
Right.
and use the experience with that one actor to pull in business development service companies and then explain what was done, explain the product that came out of it, and the opportunity that exists with other firms who want to come into that space. So that then the business service development actor sees value in investing to bring either expertise in the areas that you need so that they can then come and attract the clientele that want to get this product and start to build that capacity slowly. So it's a slower process, but it's a very important process if you want sustainability and continuity of the entire value chain.
Fantastic. So, I mean, thanks for that. I mean, that's so clear. Um, but I'll summarize it just in case. So, my understanding of what you just said is that for a new entrant into economic development, we really should have two separate parts, caps. We should have a facilitator cap, and we should have a private sector engagement cap. Private sector engagement often comes when you're operating in a thin market, or it might be even in a thick market, but there are services that may not be available.
Yes.
And the skill set that you need for that is first to understand business, understand the how to put together a financial model or business model, how to put a business case for a particular product, how to sell that particular case to the private sector that you're engaged with. Whereas as a facilitator, what you're doing is that this all of the services and all of these functions exist in the market. All you're not doing is just basically try to link uh, all of these uh, separate market system actors together to hopefully be a bit more inclusive of the rest of the or our participants, as we call them. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I am learning so much. I tell you guys, man, you should get notes on paper so you can record some of these things that we discuss with our experts. So, Robert, the next thing I really would like to talk about is so we know now the sort of skills that is required to be a facilitator. We have an idea of the sort of skills that's required to do market system or private sector engagement. I want to drill down into the supply side of the private sector engagement. By that I mean the investment.
Yes.
So I'm running a project. I'm designing interventions. I need private sector actors to join me in this so I can leverage their resources and their creativity. Um, what are those things that I would need to do, right, to attract these private sector actors? What are the things, language, some sort of, even you mentioned business case earlier. What are the things that as an economic development practitioner, need to really do to get them to be interested? Number one, number two, to push them over the line to begin to invest in my intervention.
Thank you. I think that's again a very good question. First of all, I think the private sector actors really primarily are in business for the bottom line. So the first thing is to develop a business case, and business case is a word that is used a lot.
Yes.
But when you look at them, really they come in all shapes and forms. But I think the most important is to have a business case that is driven by numbers that prove that first of all quantify how much investment the private sector actor has to make, and secondly, when to make that,
Mm.
and thirdly, how much money then do you make and then what are the scenarios that have to be in play, because the model has to bring that out, that has to be in play for you to see what the model has predicted. And in case those assumptions are not in play, what does the outcome look like in terms of financial return? So there are metrics that are very critical. Metrics like the payback period, internal rate of return, and in some cases also if it's a multi-year investment, then you need to demonstrate the net present value, because then those are the metrics that the investor or the private sector actor understands. If those metrics are positive, then you have a strong case. But beyond what the model tells you, there's also the practicality of, for example, the private sector actor getting the raw material or the products that they need if they're in processing, or if they're selling their products, then the supply chain, the practicality of the supply chain to get their product to where their customers are. I think that also has to be sound and it has to be practical, because most times I think the what I observe a lot with the business cases that are presented, it's not quantified enough. These metrics are not answered explicitly for the private sector actor, and thirdly, the practicality or the practical steps to either get your raw material processed or take your product to your customer is not crystal for the private sector actor. So in that case, it becomes a business case that is not sellable. So your buck really stops with your business case, and you have to understand the challenge that the business is struggling with, and then demonstrate how much of a market share, if it's possible, that private sector actor stands to gain, because then that's what the private sector actor wants to hear, the competitiveness that that opportunity gives it, over its competitors. So unless I think the business case can answer those questions, then I don't think it's a business case that is sellable to the private sector actors.
Robert, thank you very much. Thank you. I think that's a serious lesson for this session, and because the discussion needs to, we need to do a bit more on the investment and especially the business cases that Robert was just talking about. So we'll split this session into two parts. So this is the end of part one, and we will further this discussion on investment and how to galvanize investment from an economic development project point of view. So join us in the second episode of this particular discussion. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you, Alan.